And I just thought my whole time in my mind, like somewhere out there, people are praying that somebody's going to come help us, help them. And we had the ability to do it. And I mean, always, every time I make a decision, I lean forward to things that I'm passionate about, burdened at. And if doors start closing, I know I'm not supposed to go through it. I won't force it. But when doors fly open, I know I'm in the right place. And with this, the doors just kept opening, and we had the opportunity to keep serving, and we kept doing it until the doors closed.
Hey guys, if you missed out on the last conference in Nashville, Tennessee, you don't want to miss out on the next one. It's April 28th through May 3rd, Orlando, Florida, the Gaylord Palms Resort and Convention Center. You made a mistake missing the last one. You don't want that to happen again on this one. 5 days of some of the best training you're ever going to experience packed into one event. We have an early bird special right now, $50 off. Use 24 early bird on our website, streetcop.com. Look for the conference, click the link, register today. If you want to get significantly better at this profession in 5 days, don't dare miss out on the 2024 Street Cop Conference.
111, 110.
Training to be a street cop.
Hey guys, welcome to this episode of the Street Cop Training Podcast. I'm your host, founder, and CEO of Street Cop Training. My name is Dennis Bonino, and today with us, somebody a lot of you will know, Chad Robichaux. How the fuck do you say your last name?
Robichaux. Chad Robichaux.
Does anybody ever get it right?
No. That's why my nickname is Robo, because a long time ago, people in the military couldn't say Robichaux. So got a friend of mine, Foster Harrington, who passed on our first deployment. He came up with Robo, and that stuck.
Maybe for the Street Cop audience, you can tell us a little about who you are and your journey through life and what you're up to now. So we start at the beginning, where you grew up, all that jazz.
Yeah. Well, I'm from Southern Louisiana, really swamp people, bayou country, like an hour south of New Orleans. If people been to New Orleans, if you don't know there's a south of New Orleans, there actually is. That's where I grew up. French speaking family on both sides. My parents spoke French. All, the former grandparents spoke French, and real blue collar. My family are all commercial fishermen. And when I was 17 years old, I joined the Marine Corps. Long history of military in my family since 84 years. World War II, Korea, Vietnam. My father was the first Marine in our family who served as an infantryman in Vietnam. And then myself joined the Marine Corps. Both my sons are Marines, so big history of military in my family. Joined the Marine Corps for a couple of reasons. One, I think family history, wanting to continue on that legacy. But also, I just grew up a rough childhood, very dysfunctional, broken family. My father really struggled with coming back from Vietnam and never, ever being well. And so a lot of physical abuse in my home. When I was 13 years old, decided we would join the military. My brother, who's a year older than me, the two of us made the decision. It's kind of like, hey, let's escape this lifestyle. We'll join the military. We both grew up as athletes since we were kids in martial arts, and started running and swimming and seeing a Navy SEAL movie. And we were like, hey, we want to do something special, but we don't want to be joining the Navy. So we learned about being recon Marines. And that was what we set our eyes on. About a year into that, my brother, tragedy hit, and he was shot and killed. So I was 14, he was 15.
Whoa.
And so it was extremely devastating to me because, you grew up in a dysfunctional home like that. The siblings get really close. So my brother and I were really, really tight, and it put me into really deep isolation. My mother couldn't handle the loss of a son, went and moved in with her parents. My father didn't want to deal with a grieving wife. He took a job overseas. So me and my 18-year-old sister were left to live on our own. And so from the age of 15 to 17, I lived with my 18-year-old sister, worked, and tried to go to high school at the same time. And never got, I always hung around with a lot of bad people, but I never got into drugs or anything like that because of probably being focused in the Marine Corps, being focused on martial arts and sports. But I was not going to graduate high school. And I remember going to a Marine Corps recruiter named Staff Sergeant Ronald Brown. I still remember his name almost 30 years ago because most people will remember their recruiter because they hate him. I remember mine because I'm thankful for him, and I'm forever be grateful because I went to him and said, here's my situation. I'm probably not going to graduate high school, but my dream is to be a recon Marine. Can you help me? And he had some compassion for me, and he wrote a hardship letter to Headquarters Marine Corps and got me enlisted in the Marine Corps. 1993, I was 17 years old, no high school diploma. I promised him, not contractually, but just made a promise to him that I get my GED after I got out infantry school. And so I went through boot camp, went through infantry school, went to 29 Palms, California, to serve as an infantry Marine, and got my GED from a place called Copper Mountain College. For any 29 Palms Marines, they probably know what that is. And then all these years later, I have an MBA, and always joke when I'm speaking that I can't spell an MBA, but I got one. And but the truth is, I say that jokingly, but the Marine Corps gave me the second chance and a clean slate to start my life. And at the young age of 17, I just really understood that, appreciated that opportunity, and embraced it. And I focused on that goal that my brother and I set, and pushed forward to be a Recon Marine, tried out, and made it my first time through. In 1994, I became a reconnaissance Marine. So many great jobs in the military, especially after, doing all, tons of combat deployments, learning about how all the jobs work together. And, when you're young, you kind of have ego about your job being better than others. But the truth is, so many great jobs work together for the common goal of the military. But for me, there's no better job in the military period than being a Recon Marine, or eventually for me being a Force Recon Marine. And I love that job. When I got into it, I was surrounded by some of the most incredible men, especially having a dad, the type of dad that I had, to go in the Marine Corps with men that were older than me, to teach me not just how to be a Recon Marine, but how to be a man, and how to, do impossible things and achieve impossible goals. And I went through, combat diver school and military freefall school. And eventually I became the team leader for 3rd Force Recon's military freefall team. And I just love that job. And unfortunately, I say fortunately, unfortunately, at the time I went in 1993 is when I went in. The 90s, we went in war. So you're training and don't have anywhere to go. And you kind of long to go to combat and do your job. And unfortunately, that came at the cost of September 11th. And, after that, I got exactly what I asked for. I thought my unit, I actually thought 3rd Force was my unit was going to deploy right away, and didn't. And I tried out for a JSOC task force, a Joint Special Operations Command task force, was selected and went over to our premier, what I believe our nation's premier special operations unit is, and served at that unit, represented the Marine Corps, that unit with the Navy for 8 deployments. And my job there was a little different than most people might imagine the military to be. My job was an AFO, Advanced Force Operator. And for those who don't know what that job is, it's kind of like being undercover in the cop world. You go into you go ahead of your unit and build the clandestine infrastructure, build the reason to be in non-permissive places that the military is not at, but bad guys are. And you create a reason to be there as an American or a foreigner. And you build a reason to be there, and you stay in that area, surrounded by the enemy, and you work with local nationals, and through clandestine means, you build a mechanism to put your assaulters on target to capture or kill bad guys. And so that was my job. And that's what led me to working so closely with a lot of people know my story about Aziz and working with my teammate Aziz. That's why, because I was embedded with Aziz. He was my teammate. He started off as my interpreter. He became my teammate. He and I spent months. We did hundreds of missions like that. So we spent months out in the mountains of Afghanistan or across the border in Pakistan together, just living together in those mountains. And we became very close doing that, doing these operations. And he saved my life multiple times. And when we were not in those mountains, I didn't go back to base, and he went home. I went to his home, and his wife cooked us. His wife Hatra, who's in the next office over right now, she cooked our first warm meal when we came out of those ice cold mountains. And I'd sleep at his home, and I was there when his kids were born. Mashoud and I were born. I held them as babies. And so he became family to me. So I had a very unique experience in deploying to Afghanistan during those 8 deployments and operating that way, as he's an incredible human being. And I had a really unique privilege to serve in that capacity.
Tell me about Aziz. How did that start?
Aziz is an incredible story. In fact, he'd be a great guest for you to have on one day. He grew up like in, when you think of third world poverty, the lowest level of poverty you could imagine, that's Aziz. He grew up, never heard English on the radio, never saw English on TV because he never seen the radio or television before. No one in his family spoke English, but his dad told him when he was 8 years old, if you want to be something in life, you have to learn this English language from the West, because there's going to be a pipeline coming from Turkmenistan through Afghanistan, and you'll be able to get a job. And so Aziz, at 8 years old, went and found books on how to learn English, and he taught himself English at that young age of 8 years old.
Wow.
By the time he was a teenager, he was teaching other kids in his neighborhood, And by the time I think he was like 14 or 15, he says he was teaching about 500 people in Afghanistan English. So he's kind of taught himself and then started teaching others. It was probably pretty terrible English because he had no one to contrast it to, but that's what he was doing. And during what's called the Black Era of the Taliban, he got caught teaching English. He was 17 years old. The Taliban caught him teaching English, which was the infidel language. And he got in a physical altercation with some Taliban guys, was in hiding on the run, and his father, knowing that Taliban would have killed him, put him with some human traffickers to flee Afghanistan. And so he fled Afghanistan with some human traffickers, ended up in crossing the ocean and ended up in Dubai, living as a houseboy for a Christian family. And so he's in Dubai doing that. And then 9/11 happens. And when 9/11 happened, his dad called him up and said, "Hey, you didn't learn that English for nothing. You need to come back and help fight for your country." And he did. And he came back and he turned himself into the immigration in Dubai. They sent him back to Afghanistan, and he went straight to apply to be interpreter, got assigned to the 3rd Special Forces Group with the United States Army, did a great job there. And they promoted him to go over to the U.S. Embassy and work on the anti-terrorism task force. And then he did a good job there. And then he tried out or was handpicked and got selected to come over to JSOC, to NSW, Naval Special Warfare, where he served with me at the premier special operations unit for our country, for 15 years. And he was specifically, for continuity purposes, assigned to me for every one of my 8 deployments, which is very unique. If you know anything about interpreters, usually you get one interpreter for a big military unit. You go back on another deployment, you get a totally different interpreter. So we had a very unique situation, partially for the continuity of my operation, but also because he was so good and so trustworthy of who he was. And like I said, I've said he saved my life 3 times specifically, but he probably saved my life every day. Like, don't walk there, don't eat that, don't talk to that person. If you talk right now, they're going to kill us. He was just always looking out for me. And he was, in fact, we got him awarded. He was the first Afghan to be awarded by Congress, and the only that I know of to be awarded by Congress for an operation where he and I went to evacuate these 4 Navy SEALs that were caught in a Taliban village. And, I got the call in the middle of the night based on where I was. And the command said, "Hey, we have these 14 guys that are stuck in this village." They were I can't say too much details about it, but it was a clandestine operation where the assets they had, if we would have sent a QRF, a traditional quick reaction force, to get them, certainly the team would have probably killed all the bad guys and got them out, no problem. But the mission would have been compromised. There would have been a lot of collateral damage to civilians. And so they wanted to try a clandestine extraction first, and they called me to do it. And I'm trying to devise a plan. And Aziz is like, "Hey, let's just jump in a truck and drive down through the night and go get them in the middle of this Taliban village." And he didn't know these guys. He's not American. And he just like, "These are my brothers, and we need to go get them." And, he really convicted me to get in that passenger seat of that vehicle. And we drove through the night, and I trusted his lead. And, he was able to get these. We got all the equipment out. We got the SEALs out, and there was no compromise to the operation. He was awarded by Congress for his bravery in doing that. And then there's a story I hadn't shared for years now, but we just recently felt comfortable to talk about it together. But we're in a place called Batakoot, Afghanistan, and my command would typically go after guys on the top 10 list. And this guy was, I think he was number 6 on the list. And they were going to on a capture kill mission for this guy, number 6 Taliban leader. And Batakoot, Afghanistan at the time was pretty heavily populated with Taliban at the time. That's why this guy was there. And the U.S. military is pretty much a non-permissive environment. U.S. military was, if they patrolled through that area, they were going to get attacked. And so we went there a few weeks early before our assault force would go in and set up the operation. And it was the middle of the winter. I remember, how cold it was. And Aziz and I, we had parked in this tree line, and we're walking across an open field. Batakoot's like a farming town. And we're walking across this open field, and we get to the other side of the field. And there's this old man who's a farmer, and he comes up to Aziz and starts talking, and I'm trying to pick up what they're saying. And he basically what he tells Aziz is, "Hey, the Taliban is here, and they're looking for a foreigner," which would be me. And they know foreigners here. And so Aziz is like, "Hey, we have to go." And the field we were walking across was actually, I remember being upset that we were walking through this field because it was like wet, snow, muddy. And I'm like, man, it sucks walking through this field. Ended up being a blessing in disguise, because as we walked back to that field, it prevented the Taliban from driving in the field after us. we were walking, and I heard these trucks driving behind us, caught up my peripheral. They were flying Taliban flags, which means they're pretty, comfortable to be flying their Taliban flags. 3 trucks, about 20 to 30 Taliban fighters. They even had a PKM mounted on top of one of them, and which surprisingly we survived this. But they hit the brakes and stopped. I remember hearing them backing up, and we're like, "Hey, let's just keep walking and talk." And I had an AKS. Aziz had AK-47. We actually traded guns, which might sound weird, but we traded guns because he felt more comfortable with me having that AK-47. I traded ammo bags. And we were just talking about what we were going to do. We're talking about, hey, if they hit us in the middle of this open field, anybody that's been in the military listening knows that field is now a large open danger area, and they're only about 100 yards behind us. And so we're talking about bounding and what we're going to do. And the guys get out of the truck. They're yelling at us, and I don't think they were yelling in Dari. I think they were yelling in Pashtun because I couldn't understand them. But I heard the word Bosh, which means stop in both languages. And when I heard the word stop, like my only thing that stopped was like my heart, because I knew they were talking to us. But in my mind, I was thinking, I don't think they're going to shoot us, because Taliban doesn't typically do like random acts of violence. They usually want like some kind of permissions or something like that. They didn't know who we were. So I'm like, they're not going to shoot us, and they're not going to come out in this field. So if we just play stupid and keep walking, we're probably going to walk away. That was my thought. And then I heard a round crack. I don't know if I heard the gun go off first or the round crack over my head. You could hear the air pop. I don't know what I heard first, but I knew that we had just been shot at, and immediately I'm like, if we run, we're going to get killed. If we start bounding right away, we're going to get killed. So we just have to turn and fight. And I turned around, and I didn't even drop to my knee, just from the offhand. I had that AK-47, and the first person I saw was a guy who had an AK-47. He was standing against the door of a red Hilux truck. I just had that image in my mind still. And that was the first person I saw, and the first kind of threat I saw. And so I just center mass on him, and I fired 2 rounds initially. And I thought I missed him because he went backwards, but I saw the window bust behind him. So I thought I might have missed him, and then he fell. And I was expecting like a hail of gunfire to come back, but actually I think we shocked them. I don't think they thought we were going to fight. And so they actually all ran behind their vehicles. And when they started running, I just started emptying my magazine and told Aziz to move, and we began that lateral Australian peel or bounding drill. And while we were moving, we were like on a third iteration. For those that don't know that drill, it's I empty a magazine, Aziz moves, he sets in place, he empties a magazine while I'm moving and reloading, and I bound past him, and as he bounded out of a large open danger area. And that was the only really option in that kind of scenario to get out of there. And on the third iteration, Aziz was moving and I was shooting, and he saw something I didn't see. He saw someone pop up with an RPG, a rocket propelled grenade launcher. And when you're in that scenario, like I'm trying to draw fire so he can move, but I'm firing, so I'm presenting, I'm forcing them to have a suppressive fire on them. Aziz saw that RPG and stopped and exposed himself, and just stopped, and from an offhand position he shot the guy and dropped the guy with the RPG, and put himself in danger, saved both of our lives. The RPG didn't go off. And when that happened, I just yelled, run. And we ran because we were close enough to the tree line, ran the tree line, and got in the vehicle, drove back to our safe house, and contacted our command and told them what happened. And they were like, hey, was this like chance contact, or is this compromised? And I asked Aziz, hey, what do you think? And again, he has no stake in the game. He's just doing a job he gets paid for. But, time and time again, he always talked about freedom and democracy in a way that I never heard Americans speak about it before. But this is a guy who never even witnessed freedom and democracy. He's talking about a freedom for his daughters that he hadn't even had yet to not have to be sex enslaved. Freedom for his sons to be who they want to be. And people talk like stuff like that, but he was willing to sacrifice everything for it, because in that moment when our command pretty much said to us, is this mission or go or not? We had the authority to say, hey, this is compromised. We want to get out of here, or we're going to stay for 2 more weeks by ourselves, wait for the command to come. It was Aziz who had no operational stake in it, say, hey, we're good. We came here to do this job. Let's stay and finish it. These guys, they just ran into us. They're not looking for us specifically. We're good. And he chose, I trusted him and followed his lead, and just an amazing human being. And that's just one story I could tell, probably 50 stories like that of things that he did. And, I love this guy. He's my friend. And so, you fast forward to the Afghanistan withdrawal. And when President Biden made the announcement we're going to surrender Afghanistan, I was absolutely no way I'm leaving this dude and his wife and 6 kids in Afghanistan. And like nothing. There wasn't even ever a question. Like, we're going to go get this dude. He has to come. He's my friend. I'm not leaving him there. And so that's what we did. That started the rescue effort in Afghanistan for us. So.
Tell me a little bit about that. That's really fucking cool, man.
Yeah, there's a bigger backstory. So a lot of people that have heard the story and didn't read the book, because I put more of it in the book, maybe think this is interpreter, because there's a lot. Again, I don't want to I'd be careful saying this, because man, I have so much respect for all our military, and I don't want to minimize anybody's experience with their interpreter, where they had an interpreter, and so many, we helped to get a lot of interpreters out. But me and Aziz's relationship was like so significantly special because of the fact that we did all 8 deployments together. I lived in his home. I held his babies. Like we just had this special relationship. His wife, Hatra, who works for us now, she's right next door. I mean, meeting her as an Afghan woman. And I remember first meeting her and going to her house. And Aziz had met my wife on Yahoo Instant Messenger. And he thought it was so special to meet someone's wife, because they don't do that in Afghanistan, right? Especially, back then. So I introduced him to his wife. My wife tells him, hey, keep my husband safe. And he said yes. And that to him, it wasn't like, oh yeah, I'll keep your husband safe. It was like, yes, man, like it's a commitment. Like now he's obligated with his life to keep me safe. And so he wanted me to meet Hatra, his wife, which is like, for his wife to meet another Afghan would be off limits, much less an American. And so we had this real awkward, like, introduction to Hatra. She's like in her bedroom, her face is covered up. I'm standing in the living room. He's sweating bullets because he's like, I'm getting in trouble for showing it. And I'm showing my wife to this that's American. And so I'm waiting. I'm like super uncomfortable. And she like pops out down the hallway, and I see her all covered up, just her eyes. And then she goes away like 3 seconds. And it was like the biggest deal in the world for him. And then over the years, like her being in the kitchen and passing by, her face being uncovered. So years of getting closer to her, meet her handing me the baby to hold. And then, eventually, like the rescue after we were rescued, meeting in the humanitarian center in Abu Dhabi, and the whole family, all the kids, Aziz comes up, all the kids come up, kids are calling me Uncle Chad and hugging me. I'm crying. And she's standing in the back corner of the room after that she was rescued, and puts her hand over her heart in kind of Afghan fashion and says, Tasha Kar, which means, thank you. And I say Tasha Kar Ness, which is you're welcome. And at that moment, but then when she gets to America, she's in my driveway, and she runs up to me and puts arms around me and says, thank you, brother. Like that's the progress of that relationship. And then, so that just shows you how personally bonded I am with that family. And like I said, holding the kids as babies and FaceTiming over the years with Mash Kaur, the little one, and teaching him English and being his uncle. And then there's another side of this story. There's the other guys that me and Aziz worked with. There was this whole group of Afghans that were like former Mujahideen, Northern Alliance fighters who hated the Taliban, handpicked, trained by the CIA, and then embedded with us to fight with us. These guys were like super tough guys. There was one guy, his name was Bashir. And me and Aziz would take him out on operations with us. It'd be like me, Aziz, and Bashir out in the mountains for like weeks at a time doing operations. Dude's like super tough. And he was, hated the Taliban. And I trusted him with my life. I trusted him with operations. Well, he ended up, for whatever reason, we still don't know to this day, flipping to the Taliban. And he compromised our operation. And 12 of our teammates were captured, 2 Americans, 10 Afghans, captured, held, I imagine tortured, and executed. It was horrible. One of the worst days of my life to have these guys work for me. I play soccer with their kids. I ate dinner with their families. Like these were my brothers. I love these guys, and they would have died for me, and I would have died for them. I do believe they did die for me. And so it was a horrible incident. Through that incident, Aziz was compromised, and from that moment on, Aziz chose to continue working with us, knowing he was compromised. He had to separate himself from his father, his brothers, everybody, to continue working with us at that point. Also, the Taliban drove a vehicle bomb into our house, me and Aziz's house in Kabul, a VBED, vehicle-borne ID device, drove it into our house, leveled our house. Luckily, none of us were there, killed our guard. And then I ultimately was abducted by a foreign intelligence agency in a neighboring country. I can't say which one. Is the Pentagon redacted it from my book. But you could do the math. Like I was in a foreign country. So a foreign intelligence agency abducted me based on this compromise. and so everything changed for the way we operated. Aziz actually carried that operation forward for years after being compromised. So fast forward to the evacuation, Bashir is now a Taliban leader and looking for Aziz. And the way that happened was our command, we actually caught Bashir. So our command caught him. We arrested him. He had like a notebook with like Chad sleeps here, Larry sleeps here, like, Bob sleeps, like everybody sleeps, like this is where everybody sleeps. This their routes and times, even though we're deviating our routes and times, he created a pattern of life. This is where the safes are. This is where the guns are. These windows are Mylar. These ones are not. Like he had a total like all of our everyday life. He had documented. He also had plans of how they would grab us. So he was like prepared to capture our team for the Taliban. So he was like dead to rights, caught. Spent a little bit of time in the Bagram jail, and then was moved to the Port-Lacharki jail in Kabul. But instead of going to Guantanamo, some of the guys went to Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. Other guys went to Saudi Arabia. There was another secret jail there. And so that's where he went. In 2011, President Obama did a massive release of all the guys in Saudi Arabia. And Guantanamo would have been a little bit more too public. So he did a mass release of all these guys in Saudi. And so Bashir goes back to the Taliban because now he can't serve with the U.S. military, joins the Taliban, becomes a Taliban leader. So when President Biden makes the announcement of the withdrawal, Bashir contacts Aziz. I know where you live. I know where your father lives. I know who your daughters are, your sons are, and I'm coming to get you. So this wasn't like, but Aziz is going to be killed because he was an interpreter for America. This was much more specific. And in fact, there was another guy that worked for us that Aziz knew that Bashir had got to and already killed, working up to the withdrawal. And so it was very specific. We have to get Aziz out or he certainly will be killed. His daughters will be raped and maybe killed, but maybe enslaved, and his sons will be forced to be Taliban or killed. Like something bad's going to happen to Aziz for his work with us. So for me, going to get Aziz was not just about him being an interpreter. It was about this specific threat to him. And so I'm not in the military anymore. So I have the ability to, freely go do what I want as a civilian within international laws, freely go do what I want as a civilian. So I started calling some former special operations veterans who I know and trust that have a certain skill sets. A lot of guys with AFO experience or ASO level experience working independently. Also, I was looking for guys that had a lot of combat experience that wasn't looking to go in a fight the Taliban or sow their wild oats. Like, we're not going there to get in a fight with the Taliban. We're going there to rescue my friend. And so I wanted to make sure there was mature, seasoned guys. And I also needed to raise money. So I was looking for guys that had, some guys had platforms. One of them being, Tim Kennedy, who I think was on your show, right? So Tim, I'll call Tim, and Tim's, a lot of people don't know about Tim is, not only was a special forces sniper, but he was ASO level 3 doing AFO type work, clandestine work around the world. He has the experience to do this. He's a great friend of mine for over a decade, and I know and trust him. And he could also help me on the social media front to be able to help raise money for this very expensive operation. And again, going for people I trust. Some other Force Recon Marines, Navy SEALs, a few guys from CIA Ground Branch, which is our paramilitary unit. So very experienced guys, and putting this team together. And as we're talking, one of the guys just picks up his phone and he's like, "Hey, I just got a text message. These 3,000 orphans were just abandoned. The orphanage, people are, it's like a ship sinking. People are in self-preservation mode. So these people left these orphans." And he's like, "I know this, going to get Aziz and his family is important, but this is bigger." And I remember we just all kind of thought about it. We got this incredible group of people. We had 12 special forces veterans, from the special operations veterans. We had Sarah Verrado from the Independence Fund, who's brilliant and a very good connector in Washington, D.C. We had the right team. We were willing, and we all felt like I think all of us were pretty strong people of faith, and we all felt like God was burdening our heart to do more. And we made a decision at that moment to just not just help Aziz and his family, but let's go as far as we can. Let's see how far this could go. Let's help as many Americans, interpreters, their families, women, children that would be persecuted. Let's help as many people as we can. And we've gotten a lot of credit for this. I got like the Bonhoeffer Achievement Award. I got a lot of people gave us credit for this, but the truth is, I'm not smart enough, capable enough to pull this off. I believe that God stepped in and used our willingness to say yes to orchestrate a miracle. I mean, because a series of events happen that the only way I could describe them is like divine, miraculous. And so I do believe, I don't know where you are in your faith. For me, like these moments like this in life, like define my faith, like to see stuff like this happen that are like humanly impossible. I mean, we got, first of all, we had this team that came together, very uncommon way came together, and we're willing in a period of 3 days, we got permission from the Joint Chiefs to land on HKIA in Kabul, that airport that was controlled by the DoD, and the NEO operations being run by the State Department. We got permission to land there and conduct rescues of people outside the wire as civilians. To really break that down, that's, anybody's been around the military knows it's an impossibility, because the military was not allowing the military to do it. The Joint Chiefs and the Secretary of Defense and the State Department, Secretary Blinken, they were not allowing the U.S. military to leave to do these operations. And now we're civilians going in and asking permission to do this. So the fact that Sarah Verardo was able to get the Joint Chiefs to give us permission to do that was a miracle in itself. Not only that, but they were willing to take the time to vet our people and make sure our manifest had approved people on it. In addition to that, they gave us our own ramp, our own runway to do to be able to fly civilian aircrafts on and off. Now I have to move. The next problem I have to do with next impossibility is I have to move people without visas, because remember, these are people that applied for visas, SIVs, which is special immigrant visas, interpreters, P1, P2 visas, people that have association with the United States. We have to find a reason to bring them across the border, because if I move someone without a visa across the border, that's human trafficking. And the only place you can do that is Laredo, Texas. But, in the real world, we have to follow rules like, how do you move someone across the border without permission? You have to have a place to bring them for refuge. You have to have a humanitarian center or a refugee center. So we had to find a country that was willing to do that. One of our team members had grew up with the Royal Prince of the United Arab Emirates family, and we called them and asked for audience. I put a few congressmen on the phone, a senator on the phone, and got the royal family as well as the ambassador's the deputy ambassador to the United States on the phone. We had this call, and we briefed what we were going to try to do. And it was silent on the other end. I'm thinking these people think crazy that we're going to try to bring, do this. And at the end of the call, they like, we want in, we want to help. We'll roll out the red carpet. We will give you access to a humanitarian center with doctors and food and all the things that we would never think of to care for these people. In addition to that, we'll give you 2 C-17 planes, which are large military aircraft, and pilots. And then on the third day, I'm putting the operation together, and like, this is going to cost tens of millions of dollars to build to keep operating like this aircraft. And Glenn Beck, radio show host Glenn Beck, calls me up. He's runs an organization called Mercury One Charities, and we work together a lot with my foundation, Mighty Oaks Foundation, and caring for veterans. And so Glenn called me up and said, Chad, I just want to do something. So I got on the radio to raise money. I thought I'd raise a few $1,000s, but I raised $21 million. Ultimately, he raised $40-something million. He's like, I don't know what to do with it. Like, what are you guys doing there? And I'm like, I need you to start chartering planes. And so he put a guy named Rudy Atala in charge of chartering aircraft. And so all this, that's why I said all this stuff like miraculously came together in 3 days. And if any one of those things didn't work in the sequence it worked in, the whole thing would have fell apart. And so we get to Abu Dhabi, and the United Arab Emirates set us up an operations center there, gave us ability to work with their generals to control aircraft. We put a team on the ground at the HKI airport. A guy named Sean G, Dave Johnson, Tim Kennedy was on the ground team, and a guy named Sea Spray. Those 4 guys were on the ground at the airport, and to go outside and do go outside the wire and grab people outside the airport. In our Abu Dhabi center, which I was running, the Abu Dhabi center, we were putting together basically taking our requests, building target list for rescues, and orchestrating these rescue operations. And everything happened so fast, like no one slept. If you stopped to sleep for 5 minutes, like someone was going to die. Like you're trading 5 minutes sleep for someone's life. Like literally, it wasn't like a phobia, like you really were. And everyone just pushed so hard. I mean, Sea Spray lost 37 pounds in 10 days because he would not even stop to drink water. It was just crazy chaos. Anybody that witnessed that airport, like, I mean, you've been seeing it on the news, like you see people falling off of planes, but I think what people didn't see was like the most extreme example of the desperation was you got 100,000 people outside that gate trying to surge the airport. You imagine like a mom having a baby. If anybody's had a baby before and know how like precious it is to protect a baby, moms were taking their babies and in fear of it becoming a female like sex slave to the Taliban, or put in a madrasa to become a Taliban. They were so desperate to protect that baby that they put it on top of, probably kissed it goodbye, hugged it goodbye maybe, and put it on top of that crowd of 100,000 people to be crowd surfed to the wall. And then whoever got it at the end of that wall would throw it as hard and as high as they could to get over that wall, hoping a U.S. service member would catch that baby. What they didn't realize was on the other side of the wall was 6 feet high and 20 feet deep of concertina wire. My buddy Joe counted 6 babies that bled out in that wire. And
God damn it.
Yeah, so that's the level of like desperation. And we just kept pushing. And and as we're talking right now, I don't know when this is airing, but as we're talking right now, we're sitting on the anniversary date of the Abbey Gate, second anniversary of the Abbey Gate being blown up. And when the Abbey Gate blew up, 13 of our service members died. Hundreds of service members were injured. Another 170 civilians were killed. 200, the hundreds of people were injured at a gate, and we could have prevented that. I could really go into how this could have all been prevented, but when that happened, the U.S. military was forced to weld the gates shut, and the evacuations at that point were over. And in that moment, we kind of tallied up how many people we had got out. And by the way, when the Abbey Gate blew up, Tim was just at the Abbey Gate in Sea Spray, and I was like, couldn't get a hold of him. It took me like 5 minutes to get a hold of him, and in that 5 minutes, I thought, man, because they were just coming through it. But in that moment, we knew we got about 12,000 people out, and the military wasn't able to be there anymore. But we felt like an obligation to stay. The news was saying that there was 100 Americans left, which I was saying there were thousands, and I was in the news saying there were thousands, and I was being called conspiracy theorist, or that I was embellishing. Now we know that to be true because the hearing showed that there was over 1,000 Americans there. But all you had to do is do the math, right? The White House had said there were 16,000 Americans, and then they said they got out 6,000 Americans, but then they said there was 100 left. I'm not that great at math, but I'm better than that. The decibel number there is 10,000, and the White House is saying, well, all they have to do if they want to get out, all they have to do is go to the airport, right? That's where you go. Like, man, what people have to realize is that the White House took the NEO operation, non-combatant evacuation operation, away from the Department of Defense where it belongs and gave it to the State Department. The State Department treated that airport like an embassy, which means they couldn't go outside to protect it. They could only protect the inner perimeter. And anybody who understands combat knows whoever controls, like if you only control the ground space, whoever controls the outer perimeter of that ground space controls what has access in and out. We gave the Taliban the outer perimeter control. And so if you're some 20-year-old like girl that went to Afghanistan to teach English or work as a missionary or do humanitarian aid or work in a hospital, if you're that 20-year-old girl, are you going to go to the Taliban and show them your blue passport while they're chopping off people's arms, while they're hanging people in the street, shooting people? Because that's what they were doing. Of course not. You're going to be terrified. I wouldn't have, went show my passport, my blue passport to those to Taliban. And so that's what the White House is on the news telling people, and then telling people they're not going to leave them. And then admittedly leaving their number 100, even though we knew there were thousands. And so for me, I didn't care if I was right and it was thousands and the White House was right, there was 100. One American is too many. You don't leave one American behind ever. That's the promise that we have to the American people as a nation, that we will not leave you behind in a place like that, in a situation like that. But we did. And it's atrocious that we did. And now we know that it wasn't 100, that it was thousands of Americans that we left behind. And we don't know where many of them are today. And spouses of Americans as well. Our 100,000 interpreters that fought, bled, and died alongside of us for 20 years because we made them a promise. We left them behind. We left behind 40 million Afghans and 20 million women and little girls that be sexually enslaved. And you go back to why we do it. The lie that we were told, the why, was that we had been in an endless war, a 20-year war. We had to get out at some time. And most Americans, even conservative Americans, believe that. They believe that because they heard it enough, right? We're in this 20-year war. It's an endless war. We can't be at war forever. We have to get out. It was being sold in a wrong way, because the truth is we wasn't in an endless war. We wasn't in a 20-year war. That ended in 2018. We should have declared a victory. President Trump should have declared a victory and said, hey, we're in a sustainment phase now. Because all we were doing, we had between 2,500 and 4,000 troops there. We were doing a support and advisory role to the Afghan National Army and Afghan National Police. And it was working. In fact, the entire international community was participating together. And it was one of the few places in the world where this international effort was working to keep terrorism at bay in the mountains of Afghanistan. And Bagram Air Force Base is the most strategic place today's current globe between Iraq, Iran, Russia, and China. So to give that up is a huge strategic mistake in national security. and in global security. But first of all, to give it up without talking to our international partners and advising them that we're going to do it, without talking to the Afghan government that we spent 20 years putting in place, and only talking to the Taliban, the enemy of 20 years, is atrocious, right? And they signed this Doha Agreement, which means the Taliban agreed that they will not allow terrorism to thrive to take place in Afghanistan. Well, it's null and void from signature because the Taliban is a terrorist organization. And then months later, they, kind of paraded around a victory when Zahari was killed in Kabul. It's like, how can you be proud that we killed him? Like, what was he doing there? We created a hotbed for terrorism. Now you're going to be happy that you killed someone that was there. You killed one person. So, the whole thing was a giant mistake. Lots of motives could be cast. First of all, all of our generals and the Joint Chiefs recommended against the withdrawal. All of our intel committee leaders recommended against the withdrawal. The 12 State Department diplomats on the ground, whose job is to advise, sent the dissent cable that had been hidden for over a year and a half. And finally, Congress had to force, under threat of subpoena and force of holding the Secretary of State, Secretary Blinken, in contempt for not releasing it, advised against the withdrawal. But President Biden chose to anyway. And the only people I'm not going to point to, why he did, but you have to look at the motive, right? When you look at somebody, who had the most to gain? The United States certainly didn't. Our national security has been compromised over it. The global security, now Southeast Asia is unstable, right? You don't leave contingents like that. We, 2,500 troops on the ground in Afghanistan. I can name 10 places right now in the world we have 2,500 troops. We still have 80,000 troops in Japan since World War II, 40,000 in Germany since World War II, 35,000 in South Korea, protecting North Korea from coming across the 38th parallel. Moving 2,500 troops doesn't prevent war. It creates war. It creates instability. That's what America creates, stability in the world. And so the only person that benefited was not international community, it was not America. It certainly wasn't the Afghans. The only people that benefited was Iran, China, and Pakistan ISI. Pakistan, then their CIA. That's the people who benefited most. China wanted the mineral rights to Hindu Kush Mountains. They wanted it for years, worth trillions of dollars. Actually, it's said to be worth an infinite amount of money. And they wanted those mineral rights. I was called a conspiracy theorist for saying this is the motivation. We left on August 30th. August 31st, China got those mineral rights to the Hindu Kush Mountains. They wanted to be able to move, Iran wanted to be able to move sanctioned oil across Afghanistan to China, who needs oil. That was not allowed to be able to do that while U.S. military was there. And we left in August and September to start moving oil across Afghanistan. And, and we know that Bagram Air Force Base with $85 billion in U.S. military equipment and technology was taken over by China and Pakistan ISI, and they have access to all of our equipment and sensitive information. So all of our enemies benefited, but we didn't. So, kind of went on a rabbit trail there, but when we left that base, our military was forced to leave. They didn't want to leave. They felt humiliated for having to leave, but us as civilians didn't have to leave. We got 12,000 people out, so we chose to stay. We led a joint effort with a NGO coalition and got another 5,000 people out to a place called Mazar Sharif. We got a lot of credit for this. A lot of great organizations, Task Force Argo, so I can name a list of so many organizations that we worked with to get more people out, and that 5,000 people out. And so 17,000 total people we got out. And then towards the end, we just felt like there was a little bit more we could do. And there was a movement of former commandos that worked with us, and they were moving all the women and children to a place called the Panjshir Valley, and they were staging them to move them across the border to Tajikistan. And when I heard that, I had been in those mountains before, and I thought, man, they're going to try to move women and children across the border into Tajikistan. First of all, those mountains like 25,000 foot peaks. So they're forced into deep valleys that are treacherous terrain. They can be channeled in. The Taliban is saturated that area. And in addition to that, if they make it to the border without knowing where they're going, some of those border points end up into a 1,000-foot cliff, and so they're trapped in a valley and can't go any further. In addition, the border between Afghanistan and Tajikistan is the Panjshir River, which is Category 5 rapids in some points, and it's ice melt water, so it's freezing. So to move women and children across that, most Afghans don't know how to swim. It's super dangerous. And you think of Afghan women, right? You have to imagine most Afghan women, probably half of them are pregnant. So now you're moving, a lot of pregnant women, kids across. It's just impossible to do. In addition to that, never made it to the media and the news, but the Chinese military saturated that border. The Russian military saturated that border. And the Tajikistan border guard, of course, is there. So we thought the best thing to do is be able to provide them with the right information of where to cross and how to cross. That's what Recon Marines do. It's a kind of a Force Recon core mission. And so I thought, hey, this is my bread and butter. I could do that. And so I put together first we put together a team. We ended up going with myself and a Marine named Staff Sergeant Dennis Price. It was another miracle because the Marine Corps cut him loose to come with us. He's a amazing human being, Force Recon Marine, team leader of the year, scout sniper, worked at JSOC as well. And I just really wanted to go. And I thought he was a great fit. The two of us flew over to Tajikistan, and we spent about 12 hours driving across the Tajikistan mountains, made it to the border, and spent 10 days on the border. We did about 90 miles of border reconnaissance. We ended up selecting 6 spots. And every night for 10 days, we swam across the Panjshir River into Afghanistan, past Chinese, past Taliban, and built 6 routes out. When I say built 6 routes out, we do what's called fording reps. Where can they hide? Where can they tie rope bridges? How deep is the water? How fast is the water? How cold is the water? All the different information you need. Where are the bad guys at? Where's cover and concealment? Here's where we're going to stage all the equipment for a rope bridge, so you could actually use this. This where it's at is a 10-digit grid. This where your equipment's at to cross. Here's how to cross. So we spent 10 days doing that, and we're able to, last effort was able to help a lot of women and children be pulled out by these brave commandos that we had got to serve alongside. And unfortunately for us, that's where it ended. And as far as evacuations go, we are still working every effort we can to still move people out. However, right now we're moving into phase, and Aziz is actually right now he's leading a program for SIVs, because when the SIVs get here, they have no acclimation program. The government doesn't have anything like that for them. They obviously can't take advantage of our VA, even though the VA is not that great. They can't use the VA. So how do they get care for the service they did for us? And how do they get, they didn't do 1 deployment, 2 deployments. They did 20 years of fighting, lost people. 60,000 Afghans were killed in their fight for freedom. And then they lost their country and they left family behind. So there's no program for them. So we stood up a program at Mighty Oaks, our SIV program. Aziz has been trained for the last year on how to lead that by our staff. And right now he's in, I don't want to say the state, but he's in another state from me right now. And he's with 100 00s, which are CIA trained Afghans. And he's leading them in a program, and they're going to be coming out to our ranch, and we're going to be leading them through a recovery program through Mighty Oaks Foundation. So we're kind of seeing it through. We didn't just get them out. We're caring for them when they get here. So that's a lot, man.
I don't think one person on this podcast has ever left me speechless and craving more. And you went for essentially 40 minutes and didn't take a breath, and you didn't lose my attention. The whole time, like, this is the most fucking amazing story I've ever heard. And at the same time, my heart is just shredded to pieces.
It's horrific, man. This is one of the, I'm 48 years old. I've been to 50 countries around the world, and I've never seen anything. I want to say how I'm feeling right now. I'll share a story. I was in Abu Dhabi. When I was in Abu Dhabi, I had to go in these meetings, and they had the Minister of Interior there. They had about 20 lawyers from the royal family, and they had about 5 generals, and we'd have to go brief them. And we had just rescued a bunch of Americans. And our military, by the way, I want to make sure this is not our military's fault. Our military wanted to do the right thing. Our White House would not let them do the right thing. And I remember being so grateful that the United Arab Emirates helped me to lead our team to rescue Americans when our government let them down. And I remember at that moment, I was like embarrassed, because I'm such a patriotic dude. I'm a very proud guy. And I'm very proud of our country. And I was embarrassed for our country. I never felt more embarrassed to be American. I walked out, and there's a guy named Ken Isaac. If you're familiar with Samaritan's Purse, amazing organization. Ken Isaac came there to meet me, and they were a tremendous help to us. Ken Isaac's the vice president there over international operations, and he really encouraged me in that moment. And he's like, "Yeah, I get it. Like, it's embarrassing, but look what's happening here. Our government let us down and didn't do the right thing. But what would we expect from government? But look who's here doing the right thing." the government didn't do the right thing, good Americans stood up to help do the right thing and come together to do the right thing. So in that moment, I was never more embarrassed to be an American, but I was never more proud because we got to see people from all different walks of life come together simply to do the right thing. And when I say all different walks of life, like if you go on my social media, there's a lot of people that like what I do and like me, and there's a lot of people that hate me. I mean, you go into comments, like people think, they don't agree with my conservative values, my faith, and how outspoken I am about my faith. So I always get these haters. There was people writing me saying, I don't like you. I think you're an idiot, but what you're doing is awesome. Where can I donate? And I was like, that's freaking awesome. Like people coming together to do the right thing. We had a Jewish organization that wanted to pay for 2 flights. One flight was 800,000. One flight was 700,000. They wanted to pay for the flights. And we gave them everything was happening so fast. So I gave them the routing number and they, it's $1.5 million. And they called me back and said, hey, we can't make the donation. And I'm like, did I give you the routing number wrong? Like what happened? And they're like, no, you're a Christian organization and we're a Jewish organization. Like we can't give Jewish money to a Christian organization. I'm like, okay, I understand that, but you do realize we're rescuing Muslims, right? And the guy just laughed and he's like, you're right. Like, let's do it. And we did it. And, a Jewish organization gave money to a Christian organization to rescue Muslims and show, the love of God and the love of people for one another. And it was just awesome.
Hey guys, follow us on all social media platforms to include Instagram, Twitter, Facebook group. We have so much information going out every single day, and we don't want you to miss out on any of that stuff. So check it out. Go give us a follow. Man, what's it like to walk around every day with all this heaviness on your heart? I can't imagine what you must feel like because I'm just hearing the story. I haven't bared witness to anything. What does that feel like?
I mean, it's bittersweet, man. Cause, it's certainly, first of all, like I'm super proud of, Sarah and all the guys who came on board, the 12 guys, Tim and Dennis and my son Hunter and Sea Spray, like super proud of all those and to be part of that. But yeah, we rescued 17,000 people and yeah, that feels good that we helped those people, but there's millions of people left behind. I still get messages like, why won't you answer me? Why won't you save me? You don't care about us. And my brother was killed. My husband was killed. Like the Taliban's like down the street. And I mean, I get pictures of kids that, they're sending me pictures of their kids and they, please, Uncle Chad, save us. And so that just tears my heart out every time. And, I feel like I do everything I can. And then you get the haters, right? There's always haters, like as people like, busting our balls on social media saying, even when we were doing it, when we were out there, people were like, you guys are stupid for going out there. I hope you guys get killed. You guys get in the way of the military. And, people were giving Tim a hard time for being out there and saying he was, showboating or doing it for attention. And it's just silly because I can't name one person that went out there and did it for anything other than everybody that was participating in this, by the way, like gave something up. They sacrificed something to go. Tim was offered like a tremendous amount of money to go on as a consultant for people, and he said no. And he came out and did this originally just to go get Aziz for free, volunteer, do it for free. I mean, nobody got paid anything, and walked away from he runs 20-something businesses. Walked away from his businesses to do this. Joe Roberts shut down his business and is still out in Abu Dhabi volunteering to get people. I know one guy from I won't say the name. One guy was at this CIA. Imagine we're getting the ground branch of the CIA. Like for somebody to know how hard it is to get the ground branch of the CIA, you have to be in special forces. You probably have to get, college educated. This guy, I don't want to say what college he went to, but a very prestigious level college. He worked his whole life to go, to special forces, to a premier tier 1 unit, get educated, go to ground branch, and then resigned from that career because they said, you can't be there doing this. And he said, this is the right thing to do. I want to be here to help these people. By the way, these are people he never met before from a country he never lived in. I want to help these people. Resigned from his career to do that. So anyone that says that anybody did this for like anything other than just to do the right thing in the right moment is has no idea what they're talking about. And these are some of the most incredible human beings I've ever met. And they sacrificed so much to do this and just help these people. And, and it went on into Ukraine. I mean, we've been in Ukraine and people bashing us in Ukraine. What are you doing in Ukraine? Like Ukraine's corrupt. And I'm like, Zelensky's corrupt. And I agree, he is. And so is President Biden. And I'm not there to help President Biden or Zelensky. I'm there to help people. And, if you ever let politics get in your way of compassion to help people, you should probably change your politics. We have to have compassion for our fellow humans. These people in Ukraine didn't ask for this. These people in Afghanistan didn't ask for this. I was driving to the airport with my wife when we were meeting with Dennis, and I were going to Tajikistan, and my wife had the same question. My wife started to get scared. She's like, "What are you doing? What are you trying to prove?" Right? But you already got a Z's out. Everybody would understand why we got a Z's out. Why would you go back and do this? She's like, "I know you can swim across that river." And I'm like, "No, I can swim across the river." And she's like, "I know you will." And why are you doing this? And she got really upset. The only way I knew how to tell her, to describe to her, is, and this is my message to everybody out there that's, maybe questions what we did. What if it was us? And that's what I told my wife. What if it was our sons that'd be forced to join madrasas and become Taliban? What if it was our daughter Haley who would be raped to death for the rest of her life? Or raped for the rest of her life till she was used and abused and killed. Wouldn't we be praying that someone would come help us? And I just thought my whole time in mind, like somewhere out there, people are praying that somebody's going to come help us, help them, and we had the ability to do it. And I mean, always, every time I make a decision, I lean forward to things that I'm passionate about, burdened at. And if doors start closing, I know I'm not supposed to go through it. I won't force it. When doors fly open, I know I'm in the right place. And with this, the doors just kept opening, and we had the opportunity to keep serving, and we kept doing it until the doors closed. And that's kind of how I treat everything we've done. And that's how we've been treating Ukraine as well. And we have a team leaving tomorrow back to Ukraine, and I've been there 10 times this year. We were part of the Benjamin Hall rescue. And we recovered the bodies of service members that have got there, volunteering and fighting, and we're on the front line. I've been 2 hours past the front line of Russian occupied territory to just do what we can to help people. And I think that's what we're here on this earth in different capacities, but whatever our gifts and talents are, we should use them to help people around us.
I'll ask this now. I'm going to ask it again later, but where can people donate to help you guys?
Yeah. So mightyoaksprograms.org is our website. We do a couple of things at Mighty Oaks. We do resiliency programs for our troops, and I travel around the world. I've spoken to over 500,000 active duty troops. In fact, this Sunday, I'll be at Marine Corps boot camp speaking there, and 1st Marine Division next week. So we go speak to troops on suicide prevention, resiliency, spiritual resiliency, kind of prevent the problems that we have in our military. We have a recovery program at 5 ranches around the country. We do about $8 million a year in helping veterans recover, and first responders from the law enforcement, first responder communities, military communities. We help them recover, and we do everything for free. Like I said, we do about $8 million of programming a year, including paying for their flights. We have a policy side. So we advocate in Washington, D.C. for policy. I've testified before Congress. I've served in the White House coalition for President Trump, and we work on policy to make sure that they get faith-based care is available for our military and first responder communities. And then lastly is our international effort, doing things like the SIV program, doing things like leading efforts in places like Afghanistan and Ukraine, Peru, other places we've been. So if people could support there, mightyoaksprograms.org and these 4 efforts, or if any first responders or military people or spouses or SIVs are listening and feel like they need help, reach out on programs. Our programs are all free, no strings attached, and reach out to us, and we'll get right back to you. There's an apply button on our website to donate or apply.
What can you tell our audience and maybe the world about the people of Afghanistan, Peru, and Ukraine? Because I think they're so disassociated, so separated, and believe so much bullshit that they forget these are human beings there that don't want to be in those situations. What do you tell them about those people?
So I was on an interview recently, not recently, a couple of months ago, and somebody was giving me a hard time about being in Ukraine, and I was like, if we were sitting face to face, and if a baby was on a table between us, and we're sitting across the screen right now, but a baby was sitting down right in front of you and was choking, no question, you would do everything you knew how to do to keep that baby from choking. If your neighbor's house was on fire, you're probably going to call 911, but you're probably going to, if you hear somebody screaming inside, I would hope you'd run inside and try to get that person. So how far does someone have to be away from you to lose compassion for your fellow human? That's really the question. Like, how far does they have to speak a different language? Do they have to live in a different zip code? Do they have to live in a different country? How far does someone have to be before you lose compassion for your fellow human? And I think technology, the innovation of this world, like being in America, certainly, like it brings us in this bubble that we become so naive to everything that happens around outside of our little world that we lose compassion. In addition, we just see so much like, BS on social media, and we're exposed to so much like hardship that we become desensitized and forget that people really suffer. I mean, what if this was What if a nation attacked us and we were suffering, and you could say, just put all politics aside. My daughter's just been taken by Russian troops. She's being raped 20 times a day. Would you want somebody to come help your daughter? And I think people lose that. Like for me, I've been privileged, and I know I have been, to spend time in 50 countries around the world. Most Americans never left the borders of our country. A lot of Americans never even left the borders of their state, much less the country. And so I've been able to live and with families like Aziz, sit across the table and eat dinner with Aziz, and go to weddings and parties and hold babies. And I've been able to have those experiences. I've been in Ukraine on the front lines to see citizen soldiers who don't even care who President Zelensky is. They don't care who President Biden is. They don't care about the corruption. They don't care about $118 billion. What they care about is their wife back in their home village. They care about their kids. They care about their farm. They care about their cows and their goats and everything that's sacred to them. They care about their freedom and their way of life. And that's what they're fighting for. They don't care about the politics of it all. In Afghanistan, we look at Afghanistan as this political, military, strategic place. The Afghan families, they don't care about anything like that. They care about being at peace and living their everyday life. A lot of people look at Afghanistan and associate it with terrorism and the Taliban. And there's a reason that 60,000 Afghans died in the last 20 years fighting against the Taliban, because they don't want that. They want democracy, freedom, and peace. And maybe not the same kind of democracy or government we have, but nonetheless, they want peace. In Peru, these people are fighting the cartels constantly, and their soldiers are fighting, and they're especially in these border areas. And as people around the world that are suffering. And I think when you're in a place like you're in America, and by the way, I don't believe that America should be the world police. I'm not saying that. I've been to war a lot. My sons have been to war. I've seen the hardships of my family to war. I work in an organization that cares for people. Over 500,000 people now we've served that have been destroyed by war. I'm not a warmonger, and don't believe America needs to be the world police. But I believe as a nation, the light on the hill, the nation that America is, and the strength and the power that we have the ability to help nations around the world. It doesn't always mean going to war to do that. We have the ability to help. And when you have the ability to help someone in need, then I believe you should. So I think it's easy to sit in America and forget what our neighbors around the world may be going through. Right now, as I'm saying that, I think about, my heart just is torn out to know these 20 million women and little girls in Afghanistan are being raped and tortured. They're 9 years old. I have videos of little girls as young as 9 years old being torn away from their families by 50-year-old men that are Taliban, that are taking these little girls as war trophies and being sold for as little as $300. 9 years old, they just want to play with their toys still. They've been torn away and being sex slaves the rest of their life because of the decision that we, at our commander-in-chief, the President of the United States, made. How could anybody be okay with that? Where are the Me Too movement people? Where are the women's rights people? When you have 20 million women, these little girls and these women, they're not allowed to even have healthcare now, because the women aren't allowed to be educated as doctors. Women are allowed to be doctors, and women are allowed to see men doctors. So they have no healthcare. They have no education. And by the way, many of these women, never even lived in that environment before. They wouldn't had the Taliban and we freed them for a little bit. Some of these women are 20 years old or less, right? So they were born into freedom. Some of them were nurses and doctors and teachers and dentists and worked at the university. They worked in parliament and the government, and they experienced their whole life was nothing but freedom. And now they're been sexually enslaved by the Taliban. How can you not have compassion in your heart for that? I couldn't understand anybody that wouldn't.
Where does the mindset of a human being come from as a Taliban scumbag to be this kind of human being to another human being? It's just wild to me.
Yeah, it's a couple of things. One, it's every one of these ideological radical organizations is always based on two things, power and sex. Sex is usually what drives it, because they want power so they could have sex. Deviant men who are driven by sex usually make decisions like this. And if you look at any kind of radical religious organization like the Taliban, they want people to be uneducated, so they can't read God's word for themselves, and they take it and they use it as a tool to control people, and then they use it as a tool to put themselves in power. And I don't think most people that lead the Taliban even believe half the stuff they teach in the madrasas, but they use it to manipulate, the uneducated people and control them.
I'm literally just making sure I get to your website on my phone. I wasn't texting somebody to make sure that I'm there to donate as soon as we conclude.
Yeah. And by the way, I didn't mention it, but we did write a book. Saving Aziz is the title of the book. Wall Street Journal bestseller, and it's being made into a movie. I'm super excited about, not because this story gets to be made a movie, because I'm excited about it for the awareness, so people know. And I had a lot of offers to make the book and that movie, and we turned down some of the biggest names in Hollywood production companies to go with the people that would tell it right and tell it accurate and tell it truthful, and ultimately it ended up being better because it's fully funded. It's going to be probably like a $30 to $40 million production, so it's going to be a very quality movie done really well. I can't say the name of the writer and producer, but it's yet I'm not allowed to say it yet, but everybody would know who it was. One of the bigger names in Hollywood that would be have some like-minded values and is going to tell it the right way, because so many people will need to be honored by it in the story, and the truth needs to be told about what happened there. And so it's being made in a motion picture film, and the book's available anywhere. Saving Aziz is the title, and we have another book coming out in next year on Ukraine as well. So
it's like so much to unpack here. I sit here and have so much guilt for not doing more at the moment, and I mean, I'm torn between like letting people know how much I care and what I've done versus like how embarrassed I am by how much I didn't do. And I'll just tell you a few things that has nothing to do with me, but maybe to emphasize how much I feel about this conversation. As soon as the Russian-Ukraine war kicked off, I've very, very close Ukrainian friends, and I just started shipping everything I could possibly send off of Amazon to them, and things that they didn't even think about. So like they wanted radios, and I was like, man, how are they going to charge these radios? So I sent like the solar powered battery packs, and dude, I sent a lot. And so like my friends were going like, dude, you're getting this is a lot. And I'm like, yeah, dude, I can't like emphasize enough. And then our VP here, her babysitter, her nanny was Ukrainian, but her family was coming over here. And so she's like, hey, she's raising money for her family to live. And I'm like, yeah, here, take this much. And so she's like, oh, tell them I said thank you. I'm like, yo, I don't know what to say. I just hope that if I had to leave this country and go somewhere else, somebody had enough kindness and compassion and means that they would put themselves aside for a second and give me some of their money. And the other one was my friend who's a realtor. Well, he's not a realtor. He owns like rental properties. He was actually building an apartment for a person who's a translator from Afghanistan so he could live here. And I guess the government was paying for some of their living expenses in some sense. So he called me and said, do you know of any place that this family could live? They just got here. And I said, Frank, I'm selling my 2-family. The upstairs apartment's available, and they can take that for now. And but it is going to be sold in about 60, 70 days, but they can stay there. We weren't doing the renovation yet. It's still pretty decent living. I imagine compared to where they came from, Afghanistan, it wasn't bad. And it was a really nice town here in New Jersey. And at the end, the guy said to me, and I don't know his name, and I was very, very busy at the time. And he says, like, they've given me money to use towards my allowance. And I said, use it for something else, dude. And I said, I just, on behalf of the American people, if there's anything I could do to help, you don't owe me $1. So, I might have stayed there for 2.5 months. And it was my honor. And so as you're telling me these stories, I think we all tend to forget what our role is as human beings. And you just want to help everybody, right? And you just want to help everybody. I feel like I've been so selfish in some sense of like how I live my life. And I don't think we have to live a life. I don't know. There's a lot of thoughts going. You fucking really brought a lot of emotions out of me today. Then I don't want it to stop and end, dude. I want to help and continue to tell this story on this platform. It's wild.
Yeah, I mean, it's the world's, the world's a broken place. There's a lot of need. I mean, you can't, if you have true hearted compassion and a heart for people, like it's hard to, walk through a day without stumbling upon a need. And so I think there comes a lot of discipline in that too. You make sure you're, supporting in ways that you can actually make an impact and being focused about it. Cause you could also get so stirred that you put conviction on yourself that's unwarranted, right? First of all, you should be super proud and thankful. And I'm thankful that you helped that family. But sometimes I do it to myself, like, man, there's more I could do. There's more I could do. I mean, right now I'm in Hawaii. I'm like, my heart's broken for Hawaii. And I want to make sure that we do what we can there as an organization, but also, I mean, are we able to be used there as an organization? Are we in the way? So there's lots of needs out there. You're using your platform like this, man. This is it's a great way to, platform and awareness is huge. You have the power to move people and engage, get people engaged.
Man, heavy fucking conversation today. I guess I have a few more questions before we kind of put the kibosh on this for today. And I think my first question is, would you be willing to come back on again and we can push some of this stuff and remind people? I'd love to help.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Come back on anytime. And I'd love to hear more about your event that you have too.
Yeah, I think we could do something for you there. I'd love to help out. And if we could raise some money together for your organization we're in, you would not be the only organization we do it for, but we're fucking proud to have you, dude.
Yeah, awesome. We need all the help we can. We do a lot, and it's a heavy lift. So we need all the help we can. We have there's a lot of need out there, and we're able to step up and do it. We need partnerships.
Yeah, I think we can work with you because we'll probably have 2,000 cops at our next event. We had 1,600 in Nashville last year. We'll be in Orlando in April 28th through May 3rd, I believe. So I think we're probably in the ballpark of 2,000, 2,500 cops at this event. And we'll definitely work with you to try to make sure that we can try to get some fundraising going for sure and try to see how much money we can't raise for your organization.
Outstanding. Yeah. We have I would say we have just so you know, like on the law enforcement side, we have so many police officers come to our first responder program, but in Tulsa, we just did an event in Tulsa yesterday, so it brings this up. Tulsa PD had one officer come through, and in a period of 2 years, that one officer ended up having almost 200 officers come through from Tulsa PD. The chief said that it changed the culture of their department, like having that many officers come through Mighty Oaks, and which impacted the community. So we are all about reaching out, serving the law enforcement community equally as much as we do for our military at Mighty Oaks.
Yeah, we need to join up because we're trying to do stuff over here. And I never thought when I came in today that we would be. This is a clear partnership, and I want to make sure that I do my part on your side as well for you guys. I had so many.
And talk about that. I'm up for it.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I just want to make sure that I'm prepared to help you guys out, but at very minimum, no question about it, the conference can be employed to bring more awareness to the organization. And we have other organizations there that are nonprofits that we donate our booths to, because it's so interesting. People come to the conference and are like, oh man, this thing must be a fucking crazy moneymaker. I'm like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think you really think so? I'd like it to be one day and be able to use that money appropriately. But do you really think it's that lucrative? Do you know what it costs to run one of these things?
I'd say it costs a lot to put on those kind of events. Yeah, so I had to speak at a lot of very large like men's conferences, and those events are crazy. I spoke at one in Tennessee that just had 8,000 men, and they've Ignite and at Liberty University and 5,000 men, and then of course Liberty. I do convocation there is like 15,000 people. Like putting those events are.
Oh, it's wild. I just have a question about maybe this last thing. How is Aziz and his family doing in the United States?
Man, that's an awesome question because they're doing so awesome. They they've been here over a year now. Aziz works for me. He's running on our international team as a cultural advisor. He's building the SIV program. He loves his job, and he's like, once you meet Aziz, let's just say you got to have him on your show because he's like just his personality is just so like you just fall in love with him right away. His wife Hacha works on our like all of our inventory side, like all of our stuff for programs, and so I get to see them every at work. But outside of that, like his kids, like they just loved coming here and being part of our family and coming over. And I've taken them do all their first things, like first time swimming in a swimming pool, first time going to the movie theater, first time going to eat a hamburger, first time eating ice cream, pizza, like all those things don't have in Afghanistan. And I took Aziz skydiving because I still jump, and we were in the plane and we are about to jump out, and he's hooked on a tandem rig, and he's like, "Man, you saved me from Afghanistan to bring me to Texas to kill me." And, and so like it just like all these like amazing moments over the last year. His wife Hatra, if any military guys listening, is in Kabul. There's no trees in Kabul. It's kind of like Denver. It's high. It's a mile high. It's kind of dry, arid climate, and there's no trees in Kabul. So Aziz has been all over the country, and Afghanistan there's mountains and pine trees, but in Kabul there's none. So she's never seen trees before. So she comes to Texas where we live, and we live in pine forest, and she's like thinking that she's in a jungle. She didn't speak English well when she got here, so she was calling to the jungle, and she's waiting for an animal to come out of the jungle and grab her. And so I think it's funny, but I want to take them to see a movie because they've never been in a movie theater before. So I take her and the kids to see Jurassic Park, and didn't realize how terrifying it was to her to see dinosaurs that seem real. And now she has to go home and her house is sitting up against the jungle. And so she was trying to communicate to me how much it terrified her with taking her to see Jurassic Park.
Are they acclimating to the American life now? How long have they been here?
It's been over a year, and they are very much acclimating. Mashhara, the middle daughter, joined Marine Corps ROTC, which I thought was super cool.
Wow.
She wanted to do it. She wanted to join Marine. She went to Marine Corps ROTC in high school. And I'm like, how cool is that? And like, and then Mashhud and Mashhuda both. Mashhud ended up working for an oil field company that supports Mighty Oaks. He's like doing amazing. I met with the CEO again yesterday, and he's like, I never ever had an employee as motivated and as like just the personality difference, right? Because I love America and I love Americans. Obviously, I'm super patriotic, but the way people grow up there to here, this kid, like they moved here, and I remember in July, it was last July, in the middle of the summer, first of all, he had this ingrown toenail, so his foot's like swollen, and he was cutting the lawn. And when I say July, I'm saying that because of the heat in Texas. He grabbed a 5-gallon water jug and walked 3 miles each way to the gas station to get gas, to put gas in a lawnmower for 5-gallon water jug and a 5-gallon gas can, not water jug, 5-gallon gas can to cut this lawn. And I'm like, why'd you walk? It's this busted toe. And he's like, oh, it's fun. Like for him, like it's just different. The culture's different. So he gets the opportunity to work at like this really good job in his oil field company. And he's like so appreciative and treating it with such gratitude that somebody would give me a chance to have this job and his work ethic. And so the CEO was like, I'd never seen a kid work like this and have so much appreciation for a job. And so seeing that, what else? I mean, the other thing is, Aziz has an incredible story of his transformation to his faith to become a Christian. And they've been going to church with us since he's got here. And so he's getting an opportunity to speak at a lot of churches around the country and share the conversion of his faith. And he's just really has enjoyed that. And he, for him, it's like a personal thing that he made his promise to God. And during his evacuation of Afghanistan, I could let him share the story, but in short, I'll tell you that he was as Kabul was as Afghanistan was falling, all the province was falling. The last province to fall was Kabul, and everybody had left. His guards left him. He couldn't go to his family because of what happened with Bashir back in during our compromise. He couldn't go to his family because he would have put them in danger. So he's just got him, his wife, and his kids in his house. And the Taliban's coming, and Bashir's telling him, "I'm coming for you." And so he starts handing out. Imagine his kids are like, at the time, little Mashkar is 7 years old, all the way up to his oldest son's 18. So 6 kids. He's handing out AK-47s, ammo, magazines to his family, hand grenades to his family, and saying, if they come from this corner, you shoot here. He's setting up shooting positions to do their last stand. That's where they were. And Bashir's telling them they're coming. And then he gets on his knees and starts praying. And he said he was praying and thinking like, man, I'm praying to Muhammad. Muhammad's dead. Like, and all my American friends, Chad, they pray to Jesus. So I'm going to pray to Jesus. And he said he got on his knees and he prayed to Jesus and said, my daughters didn't do this, my sons didn't do this. If you protect us, if you could at least spare and protect them, if you do, I'll tell everybody the story about what you did. And he falls asleep. He has this crazy dream about Jesus and about us rescuing him. And then he wakes up and the Taliban's in Kabul down the street. And so he's scared. And about that time is when I called, about an hour after his dream, and he woke up. I called and said, "Hey, I need you to move. We're coming to get you." And I didn't know about his dream, but the last thing I said when I got off the phone was, "God loves you, and I do too." And then we, eventually were able to get him. And so he made a promise to God that he'd share that story with everyone. And so he's been traveling around and sharing that story about his faith, and it's been pretty incredible to watch him. I'm super, super proud of him. I used to have dreams of him. It's crazy because he used to have these dreams of him when he's, in Afghanistan, no sign of coming to America. And he's no sign of coming to America and living as a Muslim. And I'd have these dreams when I'm speaking at these men's events. I'd have dreams that he would be doing that as I could see him in the stage. And so I'm speaking at Ignite at Liberty University in front of 5,000 men at this event. And I get to introduce him first time. He's speaking in front of 500 men, which if you're in a Christian speaking for 500 men is a pretty big deal. It's hard to get events like that. And but I got to give him like 7 minutes. And so I introduce him and I hand the microphone over. And when I did, because I just told the story about him, like all 5,000 men standing to give him a standing ovation. And as I'm walking away, I look back at the corner of my eye and I see what I had been dreaming about. And I got overwhelmed, man. I was like in tears, and I went back and grabbed the microphone back, and I had to tell all these men, like, man, I've seen this before. Like I dreamed this would happen, that Aziz would be here doing this and sharing his story before it happened. It's been an incredible moment. He said like one of the most profound things to me about when it comes to faith, when we were in Abu Dhabi, before the evacuation, we had applied for Aziz's SIV for 6 years. In the process of SIV, in 2009, Congress came up with this provision that if anybody served with us, once they fulfilled their contract, it was a 9-month process to take them through to give them their path to citizenship. 9 months because of their fulfilled contract to us. Aziz had been in a process for 6 years. This is a guy that did 15 years at a top tier of special operations, access to top secret information, polygraphed, everything. Right. Hero, not just to Afghanistan, but to America. And he had been in this process for 6 years. And I told him, also times, I'm like, man, I'm praying for you. This is going to happen. I know people, by the way, I know people in Congress and Senate, like if it couldn't happen for him, imagine all the people that got blown off. Like, and we make it to Abu Dhabi and we're standing there in the middle of this, and the kids are running around. And I'm like, dude, look, I'm like, Aziz, look at, like, because you're so amazing and we love you. Like we came here to get you, and all these thousands of people are here for you. And he looked at me and he said, you know what? He's like, all those years you prayed for me and you fought for me to get that SIV and get out of here, those 6 years. He's like, the reason it didn't happen is because God knew. I'm like, God knew what? He's like, if I would have came out and got in the United States 6 years ago, you would never came to Afghanistan to get me. And all these people around here would still be stuck there. And like, I was like, man, how unselfish that was for him to say that. And the awareness he had of that was just so amazing, man. Yeah. He's an incredible dude.
What's your relationship like with him now?
I mean, we actually, have always had this close friend relationship. I think things are just different. Things are just different now, like in a better way. Like we just, I just have a tremendous amount of respect for him. Like personally, his just unselfishness and willingness to sacrifice, his authenticity. He's like one of the most authentic guys I know. And just the belt to work with him now. He's a very hard worker, and he's worked for me before in the military, but now he's working for me now. But he's just such a hard worker, and so I have a lot of respect for him that way. But also have respect the fact that how hard this has to be for him. I think a lot of people would look at a guy like Aziz or Afghans and think, man, that guy got a meal ticket, right? He came to America, like he's got a good job. He's living the American dream. Yeah, but this culture is different. This culture may seem great, but so is the way they grew up there. They like the Afghan lifestyle. They like being able to, sit around with neighbors every day, and everybody walks in each other's house without having to knock, and has family get-togethers, and they lives life slower. and appreciate things differently, appreciate food and fellowship and his father, his mother. He'll never see his father again. He will never see his father again. He will never see his mother again. He'll never see his brothers or sisters again. He'll never see his nieces and nephews again. And so while people could think they, these Afghans that came here got a meal ticket and cashed out and cashed in on the American dream, they also gave up a lot. And I get to spend time with him and hear his heart and see him hurting for that still. They hurt. His wife hurts, and his daughters. I mean, his daughters especially. It may sound stupid, but they had a dog, and the kids, their family dog. They had to, they grabbed that backpack. That's it. Everything they put in the backpack. And their dog's sitting there crying for them, and as they walked away, their kids are like, still feel guilt for leaving their dog behind, which sounds silly, but to a kid that's not silly, and they left friends behind and family. They'll never see them again. And this lifestyle in America is great, but it's different. And there's things that they love that they'll never have again there. They come over to my house and go swimming and stuff like that, but Afghanistan, man, every day is a get together, every day is a party. And they just live life that way, and they'll never have that again.
You fucked me up today, that's for sure. But in a good way. Like, oof. And I'm going to therapy in like 30 minutes. So
give him a tip today.
Now I'm all like in a different state. Hopefully I can convey what I need to convey this afternoon. But man, we got to pick this up again.
I'm in, man. That's it. All
right. Well, dude, one more time, where can people donate? I'm going to literally, no bullshit, before I get out of this chair, I'm donating money again.
MightyOaksPrograms.org is the website, MightyOaksPrograms.org. And then if you want a copy of the book, Saving Aziz, anywhere books are sold. It's also an audio book, and I read it. I did the audio read.
All right. Well, listen, I'm going to have Frankie send you my number, and I appreciate it. And we'll get together and put this stuff together. I'm going to just rush out of here now. But thank you so much.
Mine too. So.
All right. We'll have more. We have more work to do, and I'm going to leave these notes here because I have a lot of stuff I have to ask you.
Right on, brother.
Appreciate it. Chad, this is great.
And thanks to your audience as well. So.
Thanks, man. Thank you so much. I'll see you. Hey guys, check out our upcoming training at streetcop.com. Don't forget, we have 50 instructors nationally teaching a variety of topics. These are the best classes you're going to experience in your career. We make sure of it. You're going to love it. I guarantee you're going to be thankful that you went. Check us out at streetcop.com for all upcoming classes in your area.